Egyptian god cards, Exodia, a monster so powerful it's illegal to play him.
Where's yours? It's right over there. You can't see it. I'll show my room at some point. I have them. I have every single card ever printed in Yu-Gi-Oh! In First Ed. Yu-Gi-Oh! Video, he finally published it. Oh, I didn't see it go up. Why is Yu-Gi-Oh! So awesome and what happened? Man, that shit is still fucking amazing. Not like it used to be, though. Nah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was always amazing. That show's timeless. Still, one day I hope to get in touch with Konami and get permission to watch the entirety of OG Yu-Gi-Oh! On stream. That show has aged beautifully. It is so perfectly silly. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is still massive. I didn't realize that Yu-Gi-Oh! Was still, like, just as popular now as it was back then. It's just now the average age of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Enjoyer is, like, my age. It's still, like, a wildly popular franchise. Yeah. The anime, I think, is tanked. I don't think anyone really watches the anime too much anymore. But the card game itself is still, just as, if not even more popular now than it was, thanks to all the online formats. I think it's just the anime that fell off. Anime? Yep, they do an anime per new set. Or not new set, not accurate. Like new format's also wrong. New type? Like they did a new anime for Xyz, they did a new anime for Lynx. Yeah, new mechanic. There you go. That's what I'm looking for. They do a new series per new mechanic. Let's see what Act-Man has to say about Yu-Gi-Oh!
Long ago, when the pyramids were still young, grade school children played a game of great and terrible power. But these Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels erupted into chaos, as nobody could agree what the rules were. Until a great and powerful 6th grader locked away his
God, I had that poster! I had that same poster! Oh, went too far. Good lord. I brought this up multiple times in the past, and I'll bring it up again. A long time ago, this would have been back during the era where RedTube was like the king of porn. I watched a video where 2 lesbians were fisting their buttholes in front of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Poster. Not this one, but one almost like it, with Yugi holding the card straight up with the Egyptian symbols behind him, and it said Yu-Gi-Oh! And now, every time I see a Yu-Gi-Oh! Poster, it's almost the first thing I think of. It's like, damn, I remember that video.
Now, 5,000 years later, a boy named Actio has unlocked the shoeboxes and rediscovered the lost card game of his childhood.
Find it? Oh, it's still out there.
Destiny has chosen him to explain why it
Thanks
was so awesome.
Resub Olivia.
Just as the brave 6th grader did 5,000 years ago. This is the Act-Man here, and today it's time to discuss my favorite trading card game.
Harry Potter, I summon Hagrid in attack position.
Look, I even did my hair for you. Why don't we go out anymore? You used to take me to Dance Dance Revolution all the time, and now you... With all the epic moments in the anime, iconic monsters,
I really
and
want to rewatch this fucking show,
art
man.
style, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is certainly a once-in-a-millennium franchise. This was the largest Millennium Puzzle necklace I could get. I did my best, okay?
No! My Beaver Warrior!
But I don't need to tell you that, just look at its sales. You ever hear of a cardboard company making over $10 billion? Oh, I guess cardboard is actually quite the booming industry. Despite my rose-tinted
Yu-Gi-Oh!
glasses,
Fun fact, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is still, I think, number 18 most profitable franchise of all time? I think. Someone correct me. It's top 20. But it's up there. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is absolutely huge.
And coolest card game
True.
ever made.
Am I supposed to be scared to attack?
Well, only if destroying an innocent soul concerns.
That's Darts.
Nah.
I remember him.
As the president of a major corporation, I have to do that every day.
You know a game's complex when the characters spend half of every episode explaining what their cards do and making up rules as they go along. Then I'll activate my Pot of Greed! This lets me draw 2 cards!
Oh, so that's what it does. I had no idea.
God, such a huge meme for its time, too. Still is a meme in the community.
Pot of Greed! It allows me to draw
Alright,
2
I get
new
it.
cards
Thanks,
to refresh
Kin.
my hand.
You don't have to keep
It allows me to
explaining
draw 2 more
this
cards.
card.
So I can draw
You
2
can stop.
cards.
This lets me draw 2 more cards!
Quit it!
So I draw 2 cards!
What does Pot of Greed do again? And yet, because of its absurd complexity, there are countless methods to pull some sick combo
The
on your
handbooks.
unsuspecting opponent.
Activate. 3 blasting the ruin.
But Yu-Gi-Oh! Is such a broad topic with the anime, the massive changes between the Japanese and English dubs, the somewhat forgotten Season 0. Yu-Gi-Oh!'s history spans over
I don't think
20
Season
years.
0 is forgotten
So
at all. People always bring that shit up where they actually killed people. Or,
one video.
tortured people.
So I won't. So the main focus of today is going to be on the trading card game Duel Monsters.
Thanks for the resub,
and anytime
Forgetful.
you say Duel Monsters, you have to kind of put on an epic voice. You can't just say Duel Monsters. No, it's Duel Monsters. Now that we got the
Yeah, they
field
die in
set
the
up,
normal
what was it
anime
about
too, though, not just
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Season
that made
0.
it so cool. How did Duel Monsters succeed, and has it lost
Thanks,
some of that
resub, Charlie.
initial cool factor that made it so appealing in the first place? Why was Yu-Gi-Oh! So awesome? And what happened to it? He lives in a world where everyone has ridiculous haircuts, and eventually he obtains and solves the Millennium Puzzle.
No, the Shadow Realm was
Absorbs
invented
the soul
for
of an
Western.
ancient Egyptian pharaoh named
In the
Aten,
normal Yu-Gi-Oh,
and
they
gets
just
an
die.
alter ego, Yami Yugi. And together the two run amok within society by challenging people of questionable morals to a game of chance, and then if they lose, killing them, banishing their soul to eternal damnation in the Shadow Realm. Wait, the main character does all this? That's right, the protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a mass-murdering vigilante. And that's fucking badass. But
It
what
is
we got here
badass.
in America was the pussy version of Yu-Gi-Oh! The show, as the company responsible for the English dub for kids insisted on removing anything remotely related to religion, sex, titties, basically anything cool. They censored Taya going to the
True.
bathroom. Why?
Some of the things were very obscure that they would censor. They would censor like midriff, stuff like that. It's just, it's interesting because people don't realize that as kids because it's like the first time you've seen it, and you might be wondering like, what's going on?
I actually never saw this one. I didn't know Parasite got changed. Damn, that is much cooler artwork.
Time you've seen it, and you might be wondering like, what's going on? Like some people have guns pointed to their head, but they're just holding nothing.
Yeah, they're pretending like they have guns.
Yeah, exactly.
That's also amazing.
We'll shoot you with our invisible guns.
And in America, we didn't even get Season 0, probably because the series at this point had very little to do with Duel Monsters, and instead focused on ironic and dangerous games of chance, which you can't make a card game out of. Most times the antagonist would end up cheating, and Atem would be like, I knew you wouldn't play by the rules. You know, one of his teachers was kind of a bitch and obsessed with her beauty, so as punishment for cheating in the Shadow game, Atem made her face crack and fall apart every time she felt vain. The dude who held Taya hostage at gunpoint failed the Shadow game and was doomed to believe he's on fire for all eternity. Damn, dude. Don't fuck with Yugi's chick. So, pretty hardcore stuff, right? But somewhere along the line,
that's all
it was
Season 0
decided
shit.
that all these unique Shadow games would morph into one.
Yeah, you
played
just
with
mentioned
cards, monsters, and real
They just brought it
magic.
all together for the
Whether or
card
not
game.
the anime was just a vessel to sell trading cards, I can't say. But a major reason Yu-Gi-Oh! Was so awesome is its premise. You're reliving ancient Egyptian battles.
So
in
cool.
games
Yeah,
of
I loved it
life
as a kid.
and death. And if you lose...
Looks like you're going to the Shadow Realm, Jimbo.
Did you know there was a series called 5Ds
On
where
motorcycles,
main characters
yeah.
all dueled while riding motorcycles? Yes, like this was real.
Card games on motorcycles.
Card games on motorcycle!
Like, how do you even handle a deck on a fucking motorcycle? Wouldn't the cards just fly everywhere? What's the actual advantage of... You know what? I've got too many questions. I suppose I should explain how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is played for all you heathens.
Oh, you
that
should
are
use
unaware.
Master Duel instead.
If there is intelligent life out there, then let's teach them how to duel.
Love that line. What happens in that scene is Kaiba sends a rocket to space with some Yu-Gi-Oh cards in it, and his reasoning is he wants to teach aliens how to duel. And if I remember correctly, an alien did respond and come down to duel us. Isn't that the origin of Yubel? Who was it? I'm pretty sure it's Yubel. Which is a series of cards in the game. There's Yubel, Yubel, Terror Incarnate, Yubel, Ultimate Nightmare, or some shit. It was Elemental Hero Neos. Was it? I thought... Are you sure it's not Yubel? I don't know, I'm going off memory. I don't remember fully. I just remember that.
You triggered my trap card!
To me, like, that's almost, like, indicative of what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like, you've activated my trap card, right? Like, you don't...
Yeah, now traps are kind of fucking worthless because everything's so quick.
Like, nothing else happens.
You can't wait a
you've activated
turn.
my trap. I use this. I use that, you know.
The only trap that's really good now is Skill Drain.
You thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you thought.
There's a lot more to it than that, but Duel Monsters was all about building a deck of 40 or more cards that synergize and create a cohesive strategy. You know, come to think
and
of it,
Imprint.
why
Oh,
does
and
society
Imprint.
resolve
Skill
all their
Drain and
personal
Imprint.
disputes by playing a children's
Everything else is
card
hand
game?
traps.
You know what?
Or
Doesn't
Eldritch.
matter, because what does matter is that Pegasus stole Grandpa Moto's soul, okay? And we're getting it back. So, okay, we got this cool idea around losing and gaining life points with monsters. What sorts of mechanics can we build around that? Too many mechanics is the
Not
answer.
enough
You don't think
mechanics.
the game needs more methods of summoning?
Oh, certainly not. Anything but that.
Now, to understand where I'm coming from with my critiques and praise for the game, I should tell you my experience first. I have a confession to make, and I think I owe you all some honesty.
I have a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
That boy.
No, I am not
That's
a virgin.
nothing, though.
I hope you can accept me into your ranks despite that.
I discovered Yu-Gi-Oh! At the best
One day
time
I'll show you
possible,
my
in the
room.
4th grade. Must have been 2003.
One day.
It was the point where, you know, I was starting to distance myself from the things I thought were too kiddie for me. So at that point, Pokemon just wasn't cutting it for me. I needed something to fill the bottomless trap hole inside me. So why was Yu-Gi-Oh! Worthy? Why is it something I'm still spending money on, collecting, and talking about? Because Yu-Gi-Oh!
He's got some good items there, though. He kind of glanced over some of these, but these are like some OG starter decks in here. And then he's even got some of the old Legendary Duelist box over here. I think he had the...
And talking about.
Yep, he's got Joey, Kaiba. Kaiba one's got some money in there. The Seal of Orichalcos one. Oh, he's even got the Master Collection over here. Or the Legendary Collection. This is pretty nice. Blue Eyes,
Your head, like,
Dark Magician.
Iconic cards.
The cards that come to mind
Egyptian
more for
God
me are
cards.
things like, you know, the Monarch monsters.
You gotta go with like the OGs, right? Blue Eyes, Dark Magician, Red Eyes. People still think about these to this day.
People just immediately think, oh, that's the game with Blue Eyes. That's like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Charizard.
True, it is.
And then there's like Dark Magician.
He has never let me down.
100% Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the beginning. I would just throw that card in no matter what the deck was, even if it was like a water deck, because it was just that good.
You know, like Breaker the Magical Warrior, Spirit Reaper, Sangan, which is the...
These aren't
A lot
iconic
of
cards,
people go
though.
with the classic, like,
Those are just like really
Monster
good
Reborn,
cards from back in the
Blue
day
Eyes,
that
Red
people
Eyes,
remember.
Jinzo even.
Maybe for me though, it actually would be Exodia.
Exodia!
True! Exodia is another big one. Karibo.
It's iconic.
The art of the cards, pun intended, is what initially caught my eye. I didn't know anything about how to
God, the
play
art is
game.
still good,
All I
too.
knew was there were dope monsters with kick-ass names and gorgeous holographic backgrounds right in front of me, and I wanted them.
Mine!
The imposing presence of Jinzo.
Ew, not even first ed? Oh! Eek! I wouldn't even let something like that touch my hands. Not even first ed Jinzo. Yikes.
The mysterious horror of Relinquished, and the badass armor of the Blackluster Soldier. Egyptian god cards, Exodia, a monster so powerful it's illegal to play him.
Where's yours? It's right over there. you can't see it. I'll show my room at some point. I have them, like... So I have every single card ever printed in Yu-Gi-Oh! In first ed, as long as it's ultimate rare and above. But I have most of the sets framed, so I put them around my walls. I've shown my whole I've shown most of my collection in a video like last year. I'd always dreamed of completing that collection. It took me a long time, but we did it.
Card art. I think some of you have taken things a bit too far. The card game sold because of the anime, and people watched the anime because of the card game. You know, kids wanted to roleplay as Joey Wheeler and get his...
No one wanted to play as Joey Wheeler.
Red Eyes Black Dragon.
He's misremembering.
Or they wanted to play as Pegasus and summon Relinquished and all his wacky toon monsters. That's not to say every card was a slapper. In the
We got Joey
department.
Wheeler fans in here?
Griggle.
God damn.
And Firegrass. And my personal favorite, Bat. Yeah, just Bat. A lot of monsters released very early on are pretty gross to look at, but in some ways I felt that like disgusting, kind of spooky, scary look fit the dark theme of the story's plot. Initially, Duel Monsters wasn't rocket science, but apparently that's what it's turned into.
So that's a common misconception that I had as well. It just wasn't rocket science because I was just a snot-nosed fucking baby boy idiot. So at a high level, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta was always pretty deep. Like, they had infinite combos as far back as, like, Magic Ruler, I think. So it always had, like, crazy turns you could do. The only difference now is the turns are much longer because of all the summoning mechanics.
Last year, after not playing the Pokemon card game for probably 18 years, I got back into it, and what I expected was to be blindsided by all sorts of crazy new mechanics, and I thought the pace of the game would have turtled up to Sonic levels of super speed. In reality, it took 20 minutes for me to relearn the rules.
Yeah, Pokemon's pretty
the
simple.
new types of cards. If you tried coming back to Yu-Gi-Oh! After taking an 18-year break, you got no chance.
Yeah, you're absolutely fucked.
The amount of new mechanics and stuff you gotta learn just to competently play will make your head spin.
Oh god, yeah, that's not even the half of it. The chain links, the spell speeds, oh my god, it's so much.
That's another thing too, is like, you know, modern Yu-Gi-Oh! The power level of it is extremely high. There's been a lot of power creep in this game, and people sometimes try to get back into it and they're like, hey, can I play the same deck I played in like 2010 or something? It's like, no, you can't. I mean, that deck might have new support by today's standards, but like still just the stuff that was good even just a few years ago isn't at all competitive today.
First, I'd like to dispel the myth that Yu-Gi-Oh! Never had balancing problems.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he gets into it. Yada lock.
Okay. Although monsters were divided by type, attribute, and level, whether or not they were good usually came down to two things. How high is its attack? How many tributes does it require? Level 4 monsters don't need a tribute, level 5 and 6 require 1, and anything above that, 2.
My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba.
Except for all the 4-star monsters that aren't Lajin, the mystical genie of the lamp. The best normal summon monster was Hitatsumi Giant at one point. Then it was Lajin,
Then it was yep.
Gemini Elf, Alexandra.
This was controversial. Do you guys know why Mechanical Chaser was controversial? Because it was only for the tournament. It was a tournament card. So that you could only get it from going to the actual events. And it was the best card in the game for a while because it was an 1850 attack. So if you played that on your opening hand, you kind of fucked your opponent off rip. It was actual pay to win for a minute. Nope, Vorse Raider didn't exist at the time. This was back in Legend of Blue Eyes.
Often they were so bad it wasn't worth using them. So even as a child, I knew it was stupid that some cards were just arbitrarily better than others for no discernible reason.
No! My Beaver Warrior!
Look at a card as badass as Serpent Night Dragon, yet it's completely useless. Why not put Red Eyes in your deck instead? Well, wait a minute, why use Red Eyes when Dark Magician is better? Well, hold on, why would you use Dark Magician when Blue Eyes White Dragon is the best 2-tribute monster? Looking back, it's clear the anime had a huge influence on the card game itself. But they couldn't just copy the rules from the anime because the rules made no sense.
There weren't actual rules in the anime. It was just fun.
Land monsters have the ability to attack me in the air!
What are you talking about?
I thought it was interesting the idea of the board affecting the attack and defense stats of a monster. Like, if you summoned a winged beast in the mountainous area, it would gain
I have all the Season 0 cards as well.
In Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 didn't
back in 1998, Bandai had the rights and printed the entire set. 100
rules, mechanics, and nuances to the game.
No, 140?
It's impossible to properly balance over 12,000 different cards. Especially when all it takes is for 2 of those cards used together to break the game.
Because if you just sort of like dump someone into
Sleepwell Galactic
and you just say, here, take this starter deck or structure deck and like go to locals and figure it out, it's like hell on earth. Like, I mean, you know, there's so many things, so many nitpicky rulings, so many crazy decks that will just overwhelm you. And I think like Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't really have a format that is
new user friendly.
Yeah, new user friendly, yeah.
It's impossible, yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Was always flawed. And I loved it regardless. But when a monster's usability is mostly determined by one stat, well, it sets the stage for power creep to take over. And take over, power creep did. Me and my buddies play the game. You know, I'll be like, hey Roman, can you not play with any pendulum cards? Thank you. So if I start ass blasting,
pendulum was the worst decision. I hate that shit.
I love Yu-Gi-Oh! And that will never change. With that being said, holy fuck, the game mechanics have been power crept. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gone up to 11 so hard, I don't even know where to start with this.
Would you say the power creep has kind of evened out now?
I don't know, like, because we're currently in a format in the TCG where, like, power creep has gotten pretty out of hand. So that's where it's like, it kind of comes in waves, you know? You'll have, like, lulls, you'll have high points of power creep. I think right now, specifically, power creep is a bit out of hand.
What drew me to Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the creativity, and, like, I like playing against my opponent. He makes this card. What can I do to deal with this? But now, modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is you make enough cards that say this card negates and destroys.
I don't know, maybe the problem is the business
Floodgates
model.
is what it's called.
New cards?
One of the biggest problems with the game that you'll see, if you care at all, I don't know how many people actually give a fuck, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Has floodgates, which lock out certain things. So one of the biggest ones at the moment that a lot of people don't like is something called Artifact Scythe and Mystic Mine. Artifact Scythe is it's a monster card that you can play in your spell and trap card zone, and without getting too deep into it, basically what happens is when you get it down the right way, it locks your opponent out from special summoning at all. Mystic Mine is a spell card where your opponent doesn't play. Mystic Mine just means your opponent's not playing that game anymore. You play Mystic Mine, the game is you're just done playing for a while. Here, I'll pull up Mystic Mine. Even if you don't know Yu-Gi-Oh!, you can read this and be like, wow, that sounds fucking dumb. And it is fucking dumb. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, your opponent cannot activate monster effects or declare an attack. If you control more monsters than your opponent does, you cannot activate monster effects or declare an attack. Once per turn during the end phase, if both players control the same number of monsters, destroy this card. So you can see why that'd be troublesome, since the entire game revolves around effects and attacks. And this is an extremely oppressive card. It legitimately stops the game until the card is dealt with. In fact, the most recent YCS Charlotte? No. I don't remember. The last major YCS was actually won by someone playing Floodgates, like a very creative series of Floodgates. And Mystic Mine, of course, was a very controversial one. Why play it? Because you win. If you're the one who plays this, it means you built your deck around it. So you can do something like a Mystic Mine burn. It shuts down just everything else. So why doesn't everyone? Oh, a lot of people do. It's an extremely popular card. It's banned in the OCG, which is the Japanese rule set, but it's not banned in the TCG, which is US. Or, well, not US. Sounds boring, though. It is. Floodgates aren't fun to watch. When you play Floodgates, you're the one having fun. So you guys might remember when I was streaming Master Duel when that came out for a little while? I took sick pleasure in Floodgates, so I do something like Crooked Cook. There's a card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Called Crooked Cook. And if you set them up properly where you use a series of water monsters, one of the monsters you use to summon him says that your card can't be destroyed by battle. And Crooked Cook can't be targeted by anything. So that means he's unable to be targeted and he's unable to be destroyed by battle, meaning that card stays forever. Unless he has one card, and it's Kaiju, where he can tribute that card on your side. Or unaffected. Unaffected, sorry, not targeted, unaffected. He's just completely invincible unless he has a Kaiju. And what you do with a Crooked Cook is you put that on the field, the game stops, and then I draw Exodia eventually and win. Show us? Actually, you know what? I can show you. I saved one of the replays because one of my opponents, I was really taking a lot of pleasure in watching them be miserable. So I'll quickly show you. I have a replay of it. One of my little hobbies was making like bad decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! But fun gimmicks. So here, let me show you the Crooked Cook. I'll tell you right now, I'm not high level with Magic. I'm still trying to get better at it. I still like Magic. It is nothing like Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so unbelievably, needlessly convoluted and complicated compared to Magic, where it's a lot more intuitive. If you're good at Magic, you're not going to translate any of that to Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic is probably a better designed game, though. I would agree with that. The beauty of Magic is anyone can learn it pretty quickly. At least get, like, somewhat of a grasp on it. Yu-Gi-Oh! You're going to need to set aside, like, a week and study it like a college course. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just so much to take in all at once. Thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is they don't have different formats. They do. It's just no one really plays them unless you have friends that play them. Like Master Duel only has modern rules unless they're doing a limited time event. So you'll only ever play it if you just know people that like the format. Ass scratch? Oh, you saw that? Yeah, I had an itch on my cheek. Thanks the resub Syfy. Alright, this is at 80%. I'm gonna pee real quick. By the time I get back, it'll be done. Give me just 1 sec. Thanks the resub Pizza Toad. But this shows exactly what I'm talking about, where there are certain things you can do that just completely shut down everything, and the game is just over the second you play it. Is this the right one? No, this is my gamble deck. Pretty hype deck, though. My entire deck is just cards that are coin flips. So I have a card, like, if I call this right, I do 6,000 damage to that guy. This must have just been a replay of when I got really lucky on all my coin flips. Why don't you stream this anymore? I just haven't been playing it recently. I've been grinding RuneScape. Alright, how do I back out? Where the fuck is the replay? Oh, it must be this 18 turn win. That's absolutely it. I made my... yeah, this is absolutely it. I made my opponent sit there for like 30 minutes beating his head against my ass. Yeah, I really made him wallow in it. Yep, here it is. Oh, it's so sad. So when do I summon it? I thought it was immediately, but it's clearly not. How long does it take to finish a match? You can win matches on the literal first turn sometimes. Like before your opponent can even play, you can win on your first turn. Sometimes you can win on the second turn. It really just depends on what you're playing. I don't remember it taking me this long to get out the Crooked Cook. But this is definitely the game. Here we go, baby. So that's the card. He no longer can play against me. So he's unaffected by shit, and then the material I use with the right-hand shark makes it so he also can't be destroyed by battle. So he's totally unaffected by card effects, totally unaffected by magic and trap cards. Doesn't matter, he's unaffected. And the material I use makes him unable to be destroyed by battle, so he actually just can't die. Under no circumstances can he die. Unless he has a kaiju where he can tribute it. So this just goes on for like 30 minutes here. This poor guy just sits here and just stews in it. Like he just can't do anything. He can't lava golem me, I only have one monster. So I just slowly draw Exodia over the course of 18 turns. Now this guy did have a way of beating me though. He could have used Sky Striker Hayate, I think, the one that attacks directly, and just attack my life points. But like a fucking moron, he blew through all of his copies of it before I summoned it. So he was fucked. Piercing damage? Piercing damage would also fuck me too. But he can't deal with it and he has nothing that does piercing. Holy shit, you literally don't play the game? Nope, I just sit here, pass turn, slow draw Exodia. There's just certain things you can do in Yu-Gi-Oh, man, that shut down playing. Oh, I didn't remember him surrendering. I remember drawing Exodia, but that might have been a different time I played it. But yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh's got so much crazy shit to it. It's fucking great.
Just make them better than the old ones. It's the same problem MMORPGs have, where a new expansion has to increase the power level somehow, otherwise why buy it?
This goes back to the fact that this game is exceptionally old, and when you have a game that is
it's not that
for
old.
15,
I mean,
20 years
I'm older
plus,
than the game.
How do you sell your new product? Well, I mean, you have to make and create new cards that are enticing and interesting for people to want to play. Well, naturally, if there's no end point,
He's a bit
where you
slay.
just keep making slightly more powerful cards,
In the Prime Cold.
5 more iterations of Raigeki, you're just going to end up with these ridiculously overpowered cards that just trump them in every way possible.
Pot of Super Greed, draw 3 cards.
Yeah, pretty much.
What I know of Magic the Gathering, the amount of things you can do in a turn is limited by resources. Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't like this.
No resources.
Initiate a pendulum summon!
Pendulum?
I will now place 2 monsters in my pendulum zone, and I can summon 5 monsters at once!
What the fuck? There is no limit to the number of monsters you can summon, cards you can search from your deck, cards you can get back from your graveyard to your hand, or
not everything's once per turn, so you can infinite loop.
Crazy shit. Yu-Gi-Oh has gotten to a point where so much shit is happening, you can end up having 15-minute long turns, where someone goes
That's a quick
half
turn.
of their deck, has 10 cards in the graveyard and like 8 cards in their hand, 5 monsters on the field on the first turn, and they all have effects that negate other effects, so your opponent is basically locked out of playing, which is the most unfun thing that can happen in Yu-Gi-Oh! This is why everybody hated the Yada lock, because it just locked you out from playing the game.
That's a classic.
Not fun.
Yu-Gi-Oh's gotten to the point, literally, where your whole goal turn 1 is literally to make it so your opponent cannot Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's a very interesting design decision. I mean, this is even at the highest level of competitive.
I can't play my deck. I can't go into my extra deck. If I try and play with just my cards in my hand, you just negate them.
Yep.
And I just sat here for 10-15 minutes waiting for you to just set that up.
So Konami kept increasing the power level and utility of cards in a new set, but then the one after has to be slightly more powerful, and then the one after that. And when you keep that mindset for over 20 years, well, it certainly explains the state of modern Yu-Gi-Oh!
A mirror force sends you attack and destroy it. He can't be destroyed by spells or traps.
What?
Alrighty then, I special summon Blue Eyes to attack your legendary fisherman. He can't be destroyed by battle. So
I haven't seen Legendary Fisherman 3. I can't imagine he's good though.
He is unaffected by all spells and traps. Okay, so I'm gonna punch you in the mouth and then I'm gonna flip this table over.
If I were to explain all...
If you want a really good example of a card that was meta-defining for a little while, it was the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. This card is, I still think, an outrageous card, and this was totally legal for a while. This card was so fucking stacked. So unbelievably fucking stacked. So it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. It has a great base stat line, by the way. It can't be targeted by effects. Like, it is just so nasty, and it can just straight destroy a monster that your opponent controls and inflict damage to your opponent based on its attack. Such a nutty card. If you don't know Yu-Gi-Oh! And you read this, you're like, how the fuck do you play against this? I think this is a card that immediately jumps out as like, you read this having no idea like what modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like, you're like, what the fuck? How are you supposed to play against this? Because you can negate, you can destroy. It can't be destroyed by battle, or it can't be destroyed by card effects or targeted by card effects. So what do? And it also gains 1,000 attack after it fucking negates the card and destroys it. Like, it is so loaded. It's just such a strong card.
To Yu-Gi-Oh! We'd be here for the next millennium. And that's the problem. Look at the official beginner's guide for Yu-Gi-Oh! It's 30 pages long. The difference is, most turns back in the day would be like, I draw, I set 2 cards, I summon this monster in attack mode. Any confusions around the rules or what was supposed to happen was usually a result of cards being written vaguely. Now, like I said, what's cool about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the wide array of strategies you can use.
God, yeah, there's nothing else like it.
I use 7 tools of the bandit to negate it. Get fucked, nerd. I got an old school Goat Warrior deck, a modern Umi deck. Hell, you can even make a deck around the god cards now. Now ain't that fucking awesome? So I love coming up with new strats and playstyles. What sucks about Yu-Gi-Oh! is having to understand all those strats and play styles.
Okay, so I'm going to discard the left leg with the Unga in sideways diagonal position, and Witch of the Black Forest in upside down position. I will put Gravity Bind on the field as the field spell card, and then activate Messenger of Peace, which will allow me to get Scapegoat.
That's a strong board.
And now I can add one card from my graveyard to my hand. When the left leg of
Why do you like Yu-Gi-Oh so much when it's broken and for so long? I don't know, there's just nothing like it.
The rest of my deck to my hand.
It's just such an outrageously complicated card game that you can do some goofy shit with.
You gotta keep track of the different phases, when a card can be activated, in what order card effects are supposed to happen.
Spell speeds.
Illustrate the unnecessary complexity of duel monsters. Here's an example. One of my favorite decks is called Bad Reaction to Samochi. Anytime my opponent is supposed to gain life points, I suck that shit right back, and they lose it. In order to make this deck work, I have to stall for turns. One of the cards I use is Gravity Bind, which prevents monsters level 4 or higher from attacking. But uh-oh, I summon a Link monster and an Ixies monster, and neither of these have levels, which means they're completely unaffected by Gravity Bind, for some reason. Even when you look at the Ixies cards, it's still got the stars, they're just on the other side, so naturally you'd assume that Gravity Bind would work the same way it always has, because why wouldn't it? So it makes the card far less useful in a modern format. Because Gravity Bind wasn't created with the idea that monsters would at some point just not have levels. Here's another example. Let's say your opponent has
still wouldn't be good anyway, regardless.
Field, and you go, haha, I summon Sukuyo.
Everything can get rid of back row.
To flip your Link monster into face-down defense position where I can attack it and destroy it. Nice try, guy. Link monsters can't change their battle positions for any reason. I had a monster that couldn't be targeted by other monster effects. And in my mind, that meant, okay, you
Was that fly that flew by in the video, or is that on me? Was that real life or in the Shadow Realm here?
Yeah, targeted by other monsters. Rip up all my copies of Blue Eyes. I had a monster
okay, it's in the video. Holy
by
shit.
other monster effects. And in my mind, that meant, okay, you can't single this guy out, Legendary Fisherman number 2. How naive I was to think it would be that simple. If you select a monster with an effect, but your effect doesn't include the word target, then it's not technically targeting and the effect still goes through. What fucking sense does that make? I pick that monster. I use this effect on that monster. I pick it. I target it. Duels with newer cards just turn into, like, debates and science projects. Or a fucking reading lesson. It's not fun. I guess I wouldn't be
Another fun fact is, the last one I watched live, I think, was YCS Charlotte. And that was the one where in the actual grand finals, I think there was 2 missed calls from the judges. Because I feel like a lot of times, even the judges get confused on the rules. I think it was the Eldritch player made like an illegal move or something that chat was trying to call out, but the judges didn't know or some shit. I'm spotty on the details now, but I watched it live and I was like, what the fuck?
Don't like reading. Nothing takes all the emotion and intensity out of a duel with ancient Egyptian monsters than having to stop and read a 5-paragraph effect. There's actually a graph showing that the average word count in card effects has gone from 19 to 74.
Oh, what?
Card effect. That's what 20 years of power creep does.
What?
But hold on, why the drastic increase? Well, the main problem with balancing duel monsters comes down to one simple fact. Card advantage is the most important thing, and it always has been. Therefore, you need cards that do more things. It's why people that play delinquent duels deserve to get run over. Forcing your opponent to discard with little downsides is absolutely crippling, and it's also why Part of Greed is overpowered in Yu-Gi-Oh!, whereas in Pokemon, the same card isn't.
I think there's a couple of aspects that Yu-Gi-Oh cards like really struggle with. Number one, it's the power creep, and that cards are strong enough, and how do you do that? Well, usually just the more they do, the better of a card it is, right? A card with 3 effects is sometimes just gonna probably statistically just be better than a card with 1 effect.
So in the olden days...
Not entirely true. On the whole, that is accurate. Some of the most broken cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are the ones that are from the past. So right now, a big problematic card is Skill Drain. Skill Drain came out in what set? Was it Magic Ruler? Or was it Pharaoh's Servant? It might have been Pharaoh's Servant. But Skill Drain has just basically one or 2 sentences. What is it again? I think it has only 1 sentence. And it completely shuts half of the shit down. Yeah, it's 2 sentences, but it's basically just one. Activate, pay 1,000 life points, negate the effect of all face-up monsters while they're face-up. And this is an old as shit card. Some of these are just busted in modern format. Absolutely busted. And another one that just got hit, at least I think it got hit, is this one is from Imperial Order. Basically the same thing. 2 sentences. Negate all spells on the field. Once per turn, pay 700 life points. So some of the most powerful cards are the ones that have almost no text to them, which is wild. Stop selling cards for a while, then relaunch with a new line with new rules. You could grandfather in cards that still... No. If you want to save Yu-Gi-Oh!, this is what I've staunchly advocated for. I think you just make more formats, man. There's something called GOAT format, which is the format all of us remember from back in the day. There's something called Edison format, which I think is super hype, which is basically format up to 2011. So it's still got that complexity. It's still got like synchro. It's still got a lot of depth to it. Like there's just, you make more formats. You're never going to fix modern format. I think it's too far gone. It's too locked in. There's not a whole lot to be done there. But you can make sets going forward that are specific for formats. And you can keep different formats alive. So I think that's really like the only thing they can do. Or you just keep going whole hog here and just keep the power creep going wild. Like, there's not a ton of options. Yeah, they also do have rush duels, which is a totally different thing. I still haven't done rush duels, but from what I understand, they're kind of fun. But yeah.
So, Yu-Gi-Oh! Had a lot of really cool spells and traps and monsters with elaborate effects, as long as they could only
Rush Duel is different than Speed Duel.
It wasn't that hard to memorize. A wall of text on Black Luster Soldier might seem daunting to read, but in reality, 1/3 of the effect is just the summoning requirements. The 2 effects BLS has can't be activated on the same turn. Same thing with Relinquished, what I call the first novel card. But now in modern Yu-Gi-Oh!
Such a cool card,
like
though.
Every single card. For some reason, every card has to do 4 different things. Even the commons.
Yeah, it's a tough sell. Like, are you ready to sit here and read all these cards and memorize all these
things? Give some fate.
Like, all the kind of nitpicky writing that gets very... It's fussy, right? Like, you know, whether or not this has a semicolon or not, that changes everything with the effect.
Some of the cards have interchangeable
That's actually super true. The semicolon is huge in Yu-Gi-Oh!
They'll
text.
do something when added to your hand, when you summon it, when it goes to the graveyard, then you can banish it from the graveyard to do something else. None of these are a problem on their own, but when combined as often as they are, it just becomes a fucking nightmare. And then it's like, I'm not sure when this endless combo my opponent is playing is ever going to end, so I don't even know when to activate my traps.
My fucking god, when will it end? Honestly, you're gonna have no cards by the time your turn is over. Is that what you're trying to... Yo, wake me up when this shit's over.
That's another thing. Power creep progressed so far that at one point, traps and flip effect monsters were considered too slow.
They're still considered that.
Is
There's only one archetype that uses traps, and it's Eldritch, and it's good.
Basically,
but
traps you activate
traps are
from
still
the
considered
hand.
too slow.
And that's the thing. Hand trap, that doesn't even make sense. You have to lay a trap before it can activate. That's why you had to put it down and you couldn't activate it the same turn. You were laying a trap. You want to talk about card
Is trap tricks even good, though?
Look at this asshole.
I haven't kept up with the most recent metas. It's been like 6 months.
They had to sacrifice 1/5 of the card art just to add more effects. It's like every card turned into a Bible passage or something.
Wow, that's a lot of words. Too bad I'm not reading them.
This is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. If you boil this card down, it has a summoning requirement. It has 2 effects when it's summoned, and 2 effects while it's on the field, and an effect when it goes to the graveyard. 1 card that does 5 things. 5 effects you have to keep track of. I've always thought to prevent these levels of power creep, Yu-Gi-Oh! Should have implemented unique tactics, gimmicks maybe, while updating older cards. I don't know, maybe some cards have HP and will be destroyed after taking a certain amount of damage, or maybe Celtic Guardian can block 1 attack against a friendly monster next to him. What if there were formations, you know, if you could stack up weak monsters in front of strong ranged ones? They kind of dabbled with that in the show. More Yu-Gi-Oh! Drifted away from its ancient Egyptian roots. the stupider the game and the anime started to feel. And I'm not even talking about game mechanics, just the art, names, and archetypes. I guess there's only so many Egyptian-themed cards.
I couldn't disagree more. Some of the art is hitting hard in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. Fucking sushi ships, they go in. That archetype, I think, is dog shit, based on what I've seen, but man, that archetype is cool. Oh yeah, those sushi ships go so hard. There's a whole archetype of just sushi ships and sushi-related things. It's cool. That also isn't all of them, by the way. That's just one little piece. The big heavy hitters are the Xyz ones. Oh, the camera blocked all of them? Oh, I'm sorry. Here. Maybe this is a good picture. Here's 3 of them, though. Bro, who's selling for 5 cents? Yeah, I mean, the shipping's like $1, so you're just... I don't know, you're like losing money when you sell one of these. I don't get the point either. But I love new Yu-Gi-Oh! Artwork. Shit is great. Thanks to the Prime Trill.
You can sell before that gets sold, so where do you go from there? You run out of ideas and say, well, fuck it, I don't know, have the characters duel on motorcycles. Where's the rest of the coke? But we need to understand what's really stupid about modern Yu-Gi-Oh! See, back in the day, most cards were pretty straightforward. The names made sense, and only a handful were super long or confusing, right? Trap hole. You summon a monster, it falls down the hole, it dies. Man-eater bug. You flip it up, it eats a monster. It's a bug. Mystical Space Typhoon. Destroy one spell a trap. Mirror Force. You attack me? Sayonara, bitch. The cards had names, art, and effects that all fit a theme or a type of action. I've always thought Michizur was super cool because it's like, okay, one monster's dying and the other one's pulling him down too. Rope of Life. You pay a cost to bring back a monster stronger than before. Foolish Burial. You're burying your own monster in
That's
the
a really strong card
some
still,
might
though.
Consider to be foolish. Simple, easy to understand concepts. So, what the fuck happened to Yu-Gi-Oh's simplicity? It's like every new card that comes out is part of some kind of, what is it, archetype? Hey kids, would you rather play the deck with the giant sea serpents, freaky fishmen, and hot mermaids? Or
sushi
deck that's based on French and Italian desserts or animal sounds?
Hey, those went kind of hard though.
We went from menacing insects and hordes of zombies to cars? An archetype on cars?
Hey, that's not fair. That's not fair at all. That's early too. This is still the car archetype that was played by Turbo Nerd from GX. Was it Truesdale? What the fuck is his name? I don't remember. This is old. This isn't even new. This is old. That's cheating. You just chose one of their dumb ones from back in the day.
It's a combination of naming conventions and archetypes that really piss me off. Look at this one, Parapsychroid. It's a fucking bicycle, man.
The roids, though, they're cool.
You summon a bicycle? We play in Yu-Gi-Oh! We're training for the Tour de France. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a game that had you announce every move you made, so it'd get real tiring if all your cards had stupidly long names or, you know, names that just sounded really dumb. Speaking of which, I can't wait to duel you with my Ga deck. And then I have
man,
those deck.
Those went hard though.
Real archetypes, and I could not stop laughing if you played one against me. I thought this.
For what it's worth, that Ga archetype goes so hard in Duel Links. That's what I used to climb in the KC tournament last year. That's such a nutty Xyz archetype, bro. They are wild.
Next, you're gonna tell me there's an archetype about stuffed animals. Jesus Christ, look at this name. Crimson Nova Trinity, the Dark Cubic Lord. Number 38, Hope Harbinger, Dragon Titanic Galaxy. These aren't even names, it's just a string of nonsense words. I can come up with random shit too.
True, it's great though.
Minus 73 and a third, Dragonic Spread-Shifting Doom Blaster of Legend. How about this one? Dan Mari at Ignister. What the shit is this supposed to be, huh? What the shit is this? And you might say, well, Actman, you're pretending like there weren't dumb cards back in the glory days. Yeah, there were, but they were stupid and simple. Like Bat, or Frog the Jam. Bat sucks. I'm sorry to all the hardcore Bat players out there, but he sucks. Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. Oh, and you can't forget I'm playing this card alongside my Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Juggernaut Lieb. Blaze Phoenix the Burning Bombardment Bird.
I forgot how fucking awesome Yu-Gi-Oh names were. Like, if I didn't play Yu-Gi-Oh and I'm hearing these names, I'm like, damn, I'm gonna have to get myself a starter deck pretty soon. That shit really does go so hard in modern Yu-Gi-Oh for no reason. It actually is just complete nonsense words. Like, just any cool words you can think of. Nova Super Cannon Deluxe Turbo Mode. Blood Blaster. I couldn't think of more words. I just love that shit, man. It's so good.
All right. DDD, Super Doom King, Purple Armageddon.
Goddamn right.
That I found. It's called DDD Super Doom King Purple.
I love that archetype. DDD is great.
And in the card,
you actually need to master math for it.
And in the card effect, it says you can only use the effect of DDD Super Doom King Purple Armageddon once per turn. And I feel like that could just be swapped out. You know what I mean?
Like, just the once per turn restriction on that card is like 10 words, right?
Yeah, that's it, right?
I get why they want to say you can only use it once. Like, maybe if you have like multiple copies or whatever, it could be broken. But
like, some true and
I don't know why they don't just use like a one symbol, like a one with a circle around it or something.
Yeah,
like
one PT and a little circle on the card.
Yeah, so that way, like, it just sort of says, because the thing is, like, the sentence is already kind of extra, and then the name of the card is already super long. So now the sentence has to say, you can only activate the effect of DDD Doom King blah 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 once per turn. And it's just like, did we have to say this much to get the point across?
Yeah, you did.
Like,
fuck
if you
yeah.
took out every rewritten card name and once per turn from the effects of all Yu-Gi-Oh cards, you would have deleted more words than the combined works of William Shakespeare. And I'm cherry picking, sure, but I really don't get as excited about new cards as I did with old ones. To be fair, there are some new archetypes, and they actually make cards to support Blue Eyes and Red Eyes Dark Magician decks and some other classics. I think all that stuff's really cool. But what I really hate about archetypes is how it makes opening packs far less thrilling and exciting. Remember this, the simpler the card, the easier it is to fit into most decks. Sangan or Witch of the Black Forest. Reinforcement
They still
of the army
kinda
is only
have
meant
that.
to be used alongside Marauding Captain.
Not
but
often,
it doesn't
though.
have to be. But nowadays when you open a pack and you see like each card has to work in a separate archetype, it just takes the fun out of it, because most cards in an archetype can't be used outside of that deck. So there's no creativity involved. You either play the deck the card is made for, or you don't play the card at all.
Well, so he's kind of right, kind of wrong. There is still a lot of cards that are splashable into other things. Like, I just pulled up that Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. That's a card that could be used way outside of just like dragons and like Dark Magician decks or something. Like, you can absolutely splash a ton of these broken ass cards into tons of decks. Like, there's still that feature there, but he's not wrong that a lot of cards are just specific to a one archetype thing. And yeah, the ones where you can splash them into most decks are fucking busted.
But at the end of the day, had I never played Yu-Gi-Oh, my childhood would have been way worse.
True.
I could always play the version of Yu-Gi-Oh that I knew and loved, and I don't have to play with the new shit I don't like. Because no matter where
Who doesn't
Yu-Gi-Oh
like Fright
goes as
Fur?
a game or an anime, I'll always be there, ready to dodo! So thank you all for watching. I hope this completely random and probably poorly structured video was entertaining at the least. Big shout outs to Paul from Team APS, Sladra, Dzeef, and Farfa for answering my questions and taking part in this video. Links to their channels will be in the description. Please go check them out if you want more.
This is a good breakdown.
Yu-Gi-Oh videos that are way better than mine. Alright everyone, that's all I got for today. This is the Yu-Gi-Oh man, signing out.
I just love Yu-Gi-Oh, man. I don't think there's a single franchise or property that I'm as passionate about as Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm so fucking into that shit and have been for so long now, it's unreal. Can we watch one pro match? Yeah, I can pull one up, but you're not going to process a single goddamn thing that happens. Now look at some Magic stuff. I like Magic stuff as well, but nothing's quite the same as Yu-Gi-Oh to me. I don't know, I think the fact that the Yu-Gi-Oh card game... Like, when you hear Yu-Gi-Oh, you think of children. Like, you think of, like, kids. The demographic for Yu-Gi-Oh, like the card game, is not kids. There's not a single kid who's going to sit there and read these cards. He pulled up that graph. The average card text length is 74 words. That's almost as long as, like, a middle schooler's summer reading report. No kids are reading that. And that's most cards. That is the average card text length. No one's doing that. And the kids aren't going to read 31 pages of a handbook to learn how the game actually interacts with itself. It's such an unbelievably complicated card game that most people don't realize. The amount of depth and the amount of absurd mechanics present in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is mind-boggling. It's just on a scale I haven't seen before, to its own detriment, honestly. Because the only people that play it now are people that have, like, committed to it for a long time. And I don't know, there's something just so fascinating about that to me. And it's just downright fun. Like, not to be on the receiving end of a 15-minute turn 1, which is basically the average length of a turn 1 in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! But just to be able to get that creative with your decks. Pull up table 500. This is a really good example of what I mean with the complexity. I briefly mentioned it during that video. He pulled up an archetype called DDD. There is an entire spreadsheet for DDD requirements because legitimately, you have to know, like, it's so much for the combos. Like, you basically have to be like a legitimate mathematician. It is crazy. So this is 3 months old, so it's the latest batch of DDD. So this is just basically your main deck here. And it's just showing that. Here's your extra deck. And then it starts getting into some of the potential combos you can do with the deck. And some of the interactions you can do with the deck. And it goes on and 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 on. There's 1 card combos, 2 card combos, 2 card combos, minus 1 card combo. Like, it's fucking crazy. It just never stops. It actually doesn't stop. And this is just one archetype. A lot of archetypes have similar levels of complexity, just not quite to the extreme level of DDD. And that's what makes Yu-Gi-Oh! Fun. And I think that's what makes it super unique and super interesting, yeah, for sure. But this is never a game that's going to, like, catch on again, unfortunately, because it's too complicated for most people to learn. The barrier to entry is just too high to play modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is why I think they need to lean in more to, like, older formats or revised formats or something. They kind of did that with Duel Links. Duel Links kind of caught fire for a bit, but Duel Links started fizzling out. I don't know how Rush Duel's doing. Just a sheet to memorize game states you can learn in 2 days. No. I think you're misunderstanding. This is understanding your core interactions. These aren't game states. Game states is a totally different beast. These are just your core interactions with DDD. And this is assuming your opponent doesn't interact at all. Yep. Because again, hand traps and everything, they can absolutely break these combos, which is when you're going to need to get creative and figure out new combos that interact similarly. It's just crazy. There's just so much to it, man. And what's really fun that someone just pointed out, as like a high-level player, even if you don't play this archetype, you're going to need to learn these interactions and how these combos work, because as the opponent, you're going to need to know when to break it. You're going to need to know when to Ash Blossom, you're going to need to know when to Imperm, you're going to need to know when to break this shit. So even if you don't play this archetype, this is still like mandatory homework for you in order to beat that player. Or you can just guess. Yeah, if you want to get fucking steamrolled, I guess. Just get lucky. My philosophy in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! I play the minute I can. If I can interrupt something, I interrupt it off rip and pray he doesn't have a recovery. If he does, it's GG. If he doesn't, then I probably win. It's cool though. It's very unique. That's why I fucking love it, man. And the anime slaps so hard for no reason. It is just a beautifully silly show.